Welcome to Living History UK. My name's Steve Davis and this is a Type 24 pillbox.
It's like an ocean ready to take sail, swept by current, swallowed by wave. Take heed, they'll say, no need to get out, just stay on a lovely holiday.
This is the Type 24 pillbox. But what does that mean? It meant that the Type 24 was essentially of a specific design. It had 7 embrasures in total, and it had an irregular hexagonal shape design. From the air you can see that the pillbox really does stick out like a sore thumb, and to that end it was camouflaged during wartime, and remnants of this are still visible on the pillbox. If you look at the sides of the pillbox you can see some holes, and that's where the wooden shuttering would have been attached. Britain had no defences to rely on in this hour of need, so it hastily went about building defences up and down the country. There was over 1,700 pillboxes of this design built throughout the United Kingdom. But why were they built? After the withdrawal of troops from Dunkirk in May 1940, Britain very much stood alone. The German war machine had marauded through Europe, and Britain was well within its sights. Britain had no proper defences to rely on at this moment in time. So its very own Atlantic or Channel wall was built. The defences were organised into what was called stop lines, and it utilised natural barriers of defence across the country, namely rivers, but also man-made canals too. So we're actually stood on Western Command stop line number 5, which stretches from Tamworth all the way up to Ashbourne, and it utilises the River Tame as a natural barrier of defence. Inside it had a Y-shaped blast wall, and that meant that if a grenade went through the loophole it wouldn't wipe everyone out inside the box. The blast would be contained. Stop lines, as they were known, were essentially a chain of defences, and this particular one on the River Tame in Tamworth has pillboxes dotted roughly 200 metres apart from each other. They had interlocking fields of fire, and not only would there be a pillbox, you've got the natural barrier of the river, and behind the pillbox you would also have a series of trenches which were covered in barbed wire and other anti-tank obstacles too. So what type of weaponry would be used by the troops manning this pillbox? Well, more often than not it would be the Lee Enfield rifle, but also, if they were lucky enough, they would have the Bren light machine gun too, which is a fantastic piece of weaponry, and it saw service in effect right up until the 90s and was even being used in the Gulf War. As we've mentioned previously, stop lines were formed of numerous defensive structures, and here in particular you wouldn't have just had the pillbox. We've talked about the trenches behind the pillbox, but you'd also have other defensive structures, and only a few hundred metres away there would have been roadblocks which would have consisted of anti-tank cylinders, anti-tank blocks, machine gun trenches, slit trenches, and also vertical rail anti-tank blocks as well. So I've talked more than enough, and I know you're almost as keen as I am to go inside and take a look around. So let's go in. Okay, so we're actually inside the pillbox now. We're just inside the front door, and here is the ricochet wall, which we talked about earlier. And over here you can see one of the embrasures. They're at quite a good height, to be fair. They offer a fantastic field of vision. In here you can also see holes in the wall, just below where the embrasures are. And they would have been where shelves would have been, but they've been lost across time. It's amazing, but you can actually still see some of the original paint in this pillbox. So you can see just on the embrasure here, you've got a bit of black paint. The embrasures were typically painted black, and the insides of the pillbox also painted green as well, up to waist height. Below that, they were painted white. Actually being inside the pillbox feels like I'm stepping back in time. I almost feel like I could actually be in the shoes, or boots if you will, of the guys who originally manned this pillbox. It must have been a really lonely, eerie and scary feeling in 1940 if you were stood here. So there we go, the Type 24 Pillbox. I can't believe it's still here. It's an amazing relic from the Second World War. Hope you've enjoyed this video as much as I have making it. It's been brilliant. Thanks for subscribing. Keep history alive. Thank you.